Really afternoon to you. So you and Bob Mabena go back, what, 21 years when he gave you your first big radio shot. Take us back to that year.
It's such a long time ago, and I hope that I'll be able to maintain the youthfulness and the zest for life that Bob was able to just bring onto the space. You know, it's hard to think that it was so long ago because he was just so good at reinventing himself. He was the kind of person who was restless. He wanted to do a whole lot of things, a film. He wanted to write a book. And there's something else that many people don't talk about, and I used to tease him about it. He tried motor racing as well. And on his first race, he got into a bad accident, and that was the end of that. But yeah, Bob Mabena just opened that all too important door, that first door that launched my career. And, you know, I'd put a proposal to the management of Kaya. Then there was a change of management. Bob and Stan Katz came in. He met with me, and he didn't care that I was 21, a final year student. He put me on the afternoon drive. And I remember saying to him, look, I thought I was coming in to be in the newsroom. What am I doing co-presenting the afternoon drive? And his words to me were, you are the future. And he believed in me from that moment right up until the end. I'm very honored to have been mentored by him.
And some would say he wasn't wrong about you. But that speaks to the generosity of the man in some of the messages. People saying, beyond being an incredible talent, even his co-hosts say he was generous not only with lessons, but also with the airtime itself, which to some degree in broadcasting is not always the case.
Yes, indeed, Thembekile. And, you know, I think Bob and some of the editors that you and I have worked with, Bruce Whitfield at Prime Media, those are the people who have created the old school journalist in me. These days, after a radio show or a TV show, very seldom do proper debriefs happen. Everybody goes home and we meet tomorrow about the story of the day, and there's no continuity connecting what happened last year, 10 years ago to what's happening today. I remember when I was at Kaya FM, because Kaya FM was a music station, and my entry there was that, look, we are black people, we are well-informed, we are cosmopolitan, but we also want to know what's happening in the news. So let's have a nice combination of news and music. And in one of my shows, I was still new at Kaya FM, there was a long song that was playing, and my co-presenter and I went outside. And my co-presenter was a veteran, of course, so I did everything that he did, Lawrence Dube, that is. So he went outside for a smoke, I think, and I'm revealing secrets here. And I followed him, I was just hanging around him. You know what happened to me? The next day, Bob called me into his office. He was program manager at Kaya FM. And he said, listen, Redi, we don't leave the studio when those red lights are on, when you're on air. It doesn't matter what's happening on the show. It could be a competition. It could be a documentary. That's 30 minutes. You, as the host, have to be in studio. You have to be engaged. You have to know what's happening. He used to give me that kind of feedback. And Bob would also pay attention to the granular details. For example, he'd say, you know, I can always hear when you are irritated with someone. Your tone tells me that. Or I can always hear when you are confused by something that your guest is saying, you become too quiet. Say on air that I'm confused by that. Let's go through that again. So he went through the nitty-gritties and the granular details of executing this craft that we call broadcasting, because he listened very often. And that's part of my criticism of some of the media platforms, that the bosses are not listening to what we're doing. They're not listening to how we're executing this, so that when hits the fan and things are trending on Twitter, or you're getting criticism or a backlash, the bosses were not there. They were not listening, because they should be the first people to anticipate that you made a mistake, perhaps because we all make a mistake, or the execution was not quite right. But I come from that era where the programming managers were listening in every minute. And when you got your debrief, it was really based on your performance, not to crucify you, but to really panel beat you into a world-class broadcaster. And Bob Mabena was that kind of person who was generous with his time, generous with his praise, generous with his wisdom, generous with his advice. And when he was critical, it was all done firmly, but with tenderness and respect. I really, really loved and adored him.
Do you remember the last time you guys were either together or were able to speak recently?
Yeah, so Bob was very good at sending late-night WhatsApps. And the late-night WhatsApps would have to do with your work or something that he watched. And I had just appeared on a show of a very good friend of mine, Aisha Sisay, who is doing her own conversations after leaving CNN. And I was on her virtual show, on Instagram show at home with Aisha. And Bob sent me a WhatsApp to say, I don't understand why you are appearing on shows as a guest. You ought to have not retired. He always used to roll his eyes when I told him I have just retired. And recently, actually, that was the one WhatsApp. And the other WhatsApp was when I phoned into my old place of employment, 702. I was, saying goodbye to a former colleague, but also giving some critique, I think, of the way things were being handled. Because we've got to be bold, we've got to be honest. And I think I'm that kind of person. I don't want to say in private what I can't say publicly. So I phoned in, and Bob sent me a WhatsApp that time, and I called him back. And I said, "Listen, I've retired. I'm not available. That's that." But he was basically just saying, "You're too young. Don't be lazy. Get back into the field. Let's talk. Start working," and that kind of thing. But the point of this is that Bob paid attention. Bob gave us himself. Bob gave us feedback. Bob stayed interested in people. He had a good ear, and he was very kind with his feedback. So that was the last conversation that he and I had. It was about 5 weeks ago.
And I mean, I'm wondering then, when you look at everything he's done from his time at Bob Radio, he went to Metro FM. He also had the popular show with Melanie Bala on TV, the music show, Studio Mix, for example. He then went on to Kaya. He was at Power, both as management and on air. How do we even begin then to give a lasting tribute to someone whose contribution to the craft spanned, almost 30 years?
You know, Tembegile, you mentioned all the radio stations, but there's one radio station that hardly gets mentioned, Highveld. Bob had 2 stints at Highveld Radio. That's where you work, of course, as well. He had 2 stints there. But not only that, when I went to Prime Media as a reporter, he was there as an executive in management. And then he went back to Kaya. I used to tease him about that how many times have I been invited to your retirement and your farewell shows? I'm not coming. We presented you with a nice microphone when you left Kaya FM donkey years ago, and then you keep returning. But that just shows the magnitude of the man, the largeness of his gift, and that it wasn't time for him to just retreat. And I think that, Tembegile, what we do in honoring Bob is that we stay with the times. Look at his versatility. Look at how he continued to reinvent himself. And with the COVID-19 and our changing world, we are called upon, we are enjoined to keep innovating, to keep asking ourselves, how do we do this differently? But here's another thing. Homozo, I called him Homozo, was never threatened by anyone's talent. And it's my philosophy as well. The world is big enough for all of us. There's enough room under the sun and the sky for all of us. Elevate each other, lift each other up, amplify each other, give each other honest feedback. And I think the best thing that we can do as older broadcasters is to keep opening doors. When you know better, you do better. Mentor someone, help someone, give them the information, the inside information. Give the students who want an interview about broadcasting, who are doing research and essays, because we need to start theorizing our craft and broadcasting so that it has that sustainability and longevity. So let's all be the Khomotso Mabenas, where I've got a gift, I've made my mark, but I know that this craft will sink if we don't create more and more opportunities. He was a fantastic mentor and very, very generous with his feedback and with his praise. And sometimes perhaps that's all that people need, for you to say, I affirm you, I see something in you. It may not be perfect, but we're going somewhere, and I'll take that journey with you. That's how we can pay tribute to him.
And quite open-minded, I would say, in the mentoring that he did. I mean, to give a 21-year-old Redi, who was a woman, a drive time slot when we know that was previously the preserve of men in broadcasting. You look at the journey that he had with someone like Uli Roberts, another woman at Kaya FM, and his last pairing with our very own Faith Mangope at Power. And again, you see that he wasn't gendered, I suppose, in how he gave of his time and platforms.
Well, he loved women. Maybe that's the first thing we can. That's the first thing we can say. He wasn't intimidated by smart women. He wanted to be surrounded by smart women. He he lifted them up. He created space. He didn't shrink. He didn't let them shrink. That's the first thing we can say about this. And also the ability to be a partner, because I think that's what sets you apart. If your work is driven by ego and just wanting to be the household name all by yourself, then we're not going to get anywhere. He was a great, great partner, and he opened the door in that particular way. He was always learning as well. He was always learning. I mean, to just navigate the business side, the entrepreneurial side, and the talent side of broadcasting. And I think it's very important, Thembekile, to remind people that Bob was not a current affairs presenter. He was on a music station at Radio Bob. And when he went to Kaya, again, he co-presented with Tracy Going, and you mentioned Studio Mix. But what did he do, Thembekile? He reinvented. I keep saying like this over and over again, that we don't have to be stuck in one place. We move with our society. We move with our times. And in fact, Thembekile, long before I met Bob, I was in, what do you call them these days? It's Standard 7, I think grade 9 at Poch Girls in 1993. He was on Metro doing the top 20 on a Saturday. I didn't know him from a bar of soap. I mean, I was 15 years old. That morning that Chris Hani was assassinated, 10th of April, Bob was on air. I remember listening to him saying, Chris Hani's gone. Chris Hani's gone. So agitated on Metro FM. I don't know if they still have the archive there. But what I'm saying is that for him, broadcasting was about being engaged with society. More and more, talk radio became the thing because we had a lot to discuss as a society. We are angry, we are passionate, we are affected. And Khomotso positioned himself as that vehicle, as that conduit where people can express themselves and can talk. So he didn't start as a talk show host, but he became that because the society in which he lives did not allow him to just spin the discs and just leave it there. There's space for fun. We know that song of his that I used to tease him about with Dr. Kumalo, get in the groove, yay, yo, whatever it is. And they're mentioning all sorts of people having that chaotic fun for which they were known. But he wasn't just all fun and games. He was a deep thinker, Bob Mabena. He was very compassionate. He loved family. He felt things of his community very, very deeply. And perhaps that is a lesson for us to be those kind of professionals. Whatever it is that you do, don't just focus on, I'm coming to work, I'm going to read the news. I'm an accountant, I'm going to do the numbers. I'm a doctor, I'm just going to do the diagnosis. Keep your ears open to what is happening in your community, in your society, and whether or not you can model your work to address a void or a need in your society. And that's what Khomotso Mabena did. But he was wild, hey? I think we need to be honest. Khomotso loved to party. He loved Jack Daniels. He loved to smoke.
Redi, before we reveal any more secrets, let's leave it there. Broadcaster Redi Tlhabi paying tribute to a longtime friend and colleague, Bob Mabena.